of horror films, a definitive milestone was set by Sam Raimi in 1981 with the release of The Evil Dead, a thrilling and creepy tale in which protagonist Ash Williams has to survive attacks by multiple Deadites. Whenever there's an original and well-executed idea in Hollywood that breaks expectations and blockbuster records, there tends to be a whole wave of movies trying to ride the coattails of that film. They are plain and simple ripoffs that want to capitalize on the success of the film. Since Evil Dead was such a big hit, it obviously invited a lot of ripoffs. Ripoffs are usually very poorly done, but today, I'm going to give you a list of 10 films that are so bad that they turn right around to being good again. Let's begin. Bloody Muscle Bodybuilder in Hell. Often called the Japanese Evil Dead, Bloody Muscle Bodybuilder in Hell follows Naoto, the titular beefy bodybuilder, on an adventure very much like the Evil Dead. His ex-girlfriend, a photojournalist, asks for his help in investigating a haunted house. As luck would have it, the house was once owned by Naoto's father. Naoto agrees, and the two enter the house with a psychic. Years ago, a woman had tried to kill her lover in the house, but the lover turned the tables on her and murdered her, causing her to haunt the house. The ghost sets her eyes on the three as soon as they set foot inside and traps them. It's up to Naoto to free himself from this vengeful spirit and make it out of the house alive. Shinichi Fukuzawa directed, wrote, produced, and starred in this 2014 J-horror flick. Just one look at the poster will tell you that Fukuzawa was inspired by Bruce Campbell when portraying his protagonist. If that's not enough, Naoto also says groovy. The film seems to have been cursed, as filming began in 1995, but it didn't receive an official Japanese release until 2014 after years of production delays caused by unusable takes, missing film rolls, and an insect infestation. Many scenes had to be reshot, and post-production was not completed until 2010. Despite all of these hiccups, the film ends up being quite entertaining. It's not memorable in any way, and the first half of the film is quite tedious, but stick with it and you'll have a funny, bloody time. Wither. Gunnar the Hunter is in for the shock of his life when he sees his daughter being eaten alive by his wife. His wife had fallen prey to the Vitra, an underground creature from Swedish folklore that eats humans. They steal the souls of other humans just by looking into their eyes and transform them into Vitra too. Years later, a group consisting of the couple Ida and Albin, Ida's brother Simon, and their friends Marcus, Tove, Linnea, and Marie heads into the cabin Gunnar once lived in for a weekend getaway. Little did they know that they're now at the mercy of the Vitra. This is the crux of the 2012 Swedish horror film Wither, directed by Sonny Laguna and Tommy Wilklund. The film stars Patrick Almqvist, Johan Brost, and Lisa Henney. Wither and the Evil Dead basically have the same premise. A group of friends heads to a remote cabin in the woods for a mini vacation and ends up being butchered by something supernatural. There are also other similarities such as chainsaws, protagonists wearing blue shirts and brown pants, cellar-dwelling monsters, and main characters who hesitate to kill their significant others. But Wither makes the concept its own through its involvement of the Vitra. The film is pretty mid, thanks to its atrocious acting and irritably slow pace. But the reason you should watch this film is its gore. It's plentiful and pretty realistic, and the practical effects make Wither a delight for every gorehound. Rabbid Grannies. If you think grannies are just sweet old women who give out candy and advice to everyone, hold your horses for Rabbid Grannies. In the 1980s, two old women, both sisters, invite their nephews and nieces to a party to celebrate their upcoming birthdays. Everyone is invited to the party except the black sheep of the family, a nephew who dabbles in Satanism and black magic. The other nephews and nieces are not so good either, as they're waiting for the two sisters to die so they can get their hands on their sister's wealth. The party begins in full swing, but takes a drastic turn when the uninvited nephew sends a party gift that turns the two sisters into demons who hunger for their own guests. The film is as crazy as the summary, and was written and directed by Emmanuel Kervin, with Kathin Amory and Caroline Brakeman as the main cast. The behind-the-scenes story of Rabbid Grannies is also crazy because none of the cast and crew got paid, and the French-speaking cast could hardly deliver their dialogue, so they had to be dubbed over. The film is just 91 minutes of pure insanity. Nothing makes sense, and it's filled to the brim with gore and comedy. The film is tailored for those wacky weekends when you need a film to laugh at and not laugh with. Rabbid Grannies doesn't have any plot similarities to Evil Dead, but you can expect the same level of dark slapstick humor. Bornless Ones. Alexander Babayev wrote and directed Bornless Ones, which was originally called Haunted House on the Hill in Goetia. The film stars Margaret Judson, Michael Johnston, and Devin Goodsell. Bornless Ones follows Emily, a devoted sister who buys a remote home near a medical institution, and moves in with her brother Zach, who's suffering from cerebral palsy. Emily's husband and their two friends arrive at the home to help them move in. While cleaning up, they end up removing boards marked with symbols from the windows of the house, which inadvertently releases evil spirits that begin to haunt them. Now Emily has to save not only herself, but also her brother from these evil spirits. Released in 2017, the film is laughably bad and rips every single element from Evil Dead, starting with the remote cabin in the woods. The plot has a lot of inconsistencies too. At first, Zach seems to be healing in the cabin and appears to be a medium of sorts. But a few minutes into the movie, this arc is abandoned completely. I wish they hadn't done that, as Zach is the one thing that helps Bornless Ones differentiate itself from Evil Dead. If you and your friends have just watched Evil Dead and want to watch something similar with a decent plot, limited gore, and mediocre acting, you can check out Bornless Ones. Forever Evil. Evil Dead meets H.P. Lovecraft in the 1987 film Forever Evil, directed by Roger Evans and starring Tracy Huffman, Red Mitchell, and Charles L. Trotter. The protagonist of the film is Mark Denning. Mark had attended a party in a lakeside cabin with his girlfriend Holly, his friends, the couple Robert and Jean, his brother Jay, and Jay's girlfriend Julie. A creature that looks like a zombie attacks them all, and every single person except Mark is killed. Mark decides to find out what happened with the help of Detective Leo Ball, the man in charge of the official investigation who believes the murders are connected to previous killings, and Reggie Osborne, a sole survivor like Mark who made it out alive after a previous massacre. As their investigation continues, they realize that it's not a simple serial killer they're dealing with, but an ancient god. The only film written by Freeman Williams and one of only two directed by Roger Evans, Forever Evil is a weird movie. The script is definitely not formulaic and has some originality to it, but the filmmakers are not fooling anybody into thinking it's anything other than an Evil Dead ripoff. The first 30 minutes in which the group is killed in the cabin have a lot of copied scenes. To make it worse, the acting is less than subpar. The dialogue seems to be all over the place, and the flick seems to be dependent on jump scares to build tension, rather than honing in on the plot and cinematography. The special effects are laughable, and the only good thing I can say about the film is the one thing that sets it apart from Evil Dead, the Lovecraftian god. So if you have some time to kill and want to see what would happen if cosmic horror met Evil Dead, check out Forever Evil. Demons. Would you go to a movie if a random mystery man offered you free tickets? For me, that's a resounding yes, but that is the wrong, fateful answer in the 1985 Italian horror film Demons, in which Cheryl, a university student, is offered 2 tickets by a man wearing a metallic mask in the Berlin U-Bahn. Probably a cinephile, Cheryl says yes and heads to the Metropole, where she's joined by the other audience members, 2 college boys, Ken and George, a blind man and his daughter, a dating couple, a married couple, a pimp named Tony and his 2 prostitutes, Rosemary and Carmen. Before the film begins, Rosemary scratches her face on a mask in the lobby. The movie is about 4 teenagers who dig up the tomb of the 16th century fortune teller Nostradamus and find a mask inside. One of the teenagers wears the mask, is scratched by it just like Rosemary, and turns into a blood-hungry monster who slaughters his friends. Just like in the movie, Rosemary turns evil and starts attacking the audience members, who realize they've been bricked inside the theater and must come up with ways to defend themselves. Directed by Lamberto Bava, Demon stars Natasha Hovey, Urbano Barberini, and Carl Zinni. Bava has cited this film as one of his personal favorites. The plot is basically Evil Dead in a movie theater, but for a low-budget film, Demons is surprisingly well made. The makeup effects and gore are the highlights of the film, as they're exceptionally well made and frightening, even to those with the strongest hearts. If you have a thing for bloody movies that incorporate some of the 1980s cheesiness, well, watch Demons. Night of the Demons. Next up, we have a cult classic that spawned a film series because of its popularity. Night of the Demons starts with Angela Franklin, a teenage outcast who decides to throw a Halloween party at an abandoned mortuary called Hull House. Hull House is rumored to be haunted by evil spirits, but when you're a teenager looking for a rad party, those things only add to your cred. The party is attended by a whole lot of her friends. Soon, Angela has the not-so-bright idea of holding a seance as a party game, which leads to demons entering and possessing the teenagers. Who will make it out alive, and who will have their soul devoured by a demon? Watch Night of the Demons to find out. I think the one element that makes Night of the Demons so similar to Evil Dead is the way demon possession spreads through the group. Once possessed, the teenagers do not move around like mindless zombies hungry for flesh. They're menacing and seem to delight in the cruelty they inflict. Directed by Kevin S. Tenney, Night of the Demons is the 1988 film that has Amelia Kincaid, Linnea Quigley, and Kathy Podwell in its cast. With cheesy 1980s humor and horrible acting, Night of the Demons should be terrible, but it's actually not. It ends up being funnier and more entertaining than you would ever expect it to be. So if you're in the mood for a switch your brain off movie, Night of the Demons should be your pick. Demon Wind. In 1931, as a crucified body burns on a farm, a couple named Regina and George barricade a door to prevent demons from entering. Regina's efforts prove futile as her husband George transforms into a demon and murders her. Years later, Regina and George's grandson Corey sets out to discover the truth about what happened to his grandparents. He heads to the farm where it all began with 9 of his friends, and soon they're forced to fight the same evil that once took Regina and George down. This is the plot from the 1990 film Demon Wind, the directorial debut of Charles Philip Moore, which stars Francine Lapensee, Eric Larson, and Rufus Norris. If you ever feel like watching this film, you can play the game High on Life, enter a movie theater inside the game, and watch it in full. Demon Wind was shot in just 24 days with a budget of $500,000. The atmosphere of the movie, the characters, and the sound effects really remind you of the Evil Dead franchise. The characters in the film also find out that they can kill the demons using daggers, much like the Kandarian dagger in Evil Dead. The film really shows the directorial prowess of Sam Raimi, as even with a budget higher than that of Evil Dead, Moore could not pull off what Raimi did. The film definitely has its moments, and though it won't scare you, Demon Wind is sure to make you appreciate its ridiculousness. Slaughter Day. If you like watching indie or B movies, you can't miss Slaughter Day. Twin brothers Blake and Brent Cousins wrote and starred in this 1991 film, in which brothers Jonah and Blake are forced to battle the forces of evil after a construction worker reads from the Necronomicon, and turns fellow construction workers into bloodthirsty maniacs. Sounds pretty familiar, right? The film is set entirely in Hawaii, and it's clear that the Cousins brothers saw Evil Dead and wanted to make a version of their own. The film is amateur hour at its finest, as the acting is crude and there's not much to be said about the camera work. Since the film was shot entirely on SVHS camcorders and edited from VCR to VCR, recorded audio could not be removed. Though they did add music and sound effects in post-production, you can hear the off-camera shouting of the director, Brent Cousins, yelling for actors to start acting and asking others to get out of the camera's viewpoint. Despite this probably being their first attempt at a film, the Cousins brothers nailed the action sequences, which start without dilly-dallying from the plot. Slaughter Day has a certain charm that no high-budget Hollywood movie can produce. One look at the movie and you can tell that this project is full of passion and heart and was not made for money. Evil Clutch. Last but not least, we have Evil Clutch, aka Il Bosco 1. The film follows a couple, an American college student and her Italian boyfriend, who decide to take a romantic weekend trip. As they start their journey, they pick up a hitchhiker, a beautiful and voluptuous woman who's secretly a lustful demon looking for her latest prey. The film was written and directed by Andreas Marfori, and stars Coralina Cataldi Tassoni and Diego Ribon. It premiered in 1988 at the Brussels International Festival of Fantasy Films. Evil Clutch is inarguably the most blatant ripoff of Evil Dead, and probably the worst one on this list too. There are a lot of Raimi-inspired, low, handheld shots and settings similar to Evil Dead, but of course, with none of the charm Raimi brings to his films. You really can't go into this movie expecting good acting or an intriguing plot. What you can expect, though, is mind-numbing gore, and boy does it deliver. If you're looking for some mindless entertainment, look no further than Evil Clutch. Those were all the so-bad-they're-good Evil Dead ripoffs. With any and all of these movies, don't go around expecting award-winning work by anyone involved. They're all ripoffs after all. Some are well-meaning homages, but they are unoriginal nonetheless. Go watch all of them, maybe with a friend over the weekend, or on a second screen to forget the sorrows of your work life. Either way, come back and tell me what you thought of them. I'll soon be back with more awesome stuff, but until then, like this video, share it, and subscribe to our wonderful channel. See you soon!